In this business, terminations are inevitable. They can be amiable, they can be contentious, they come in all shapes and sizes. To hear our thoughts and more, stay tuned to this episode of The Den.
The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show dedicated to exploring hot topics in real estate, local happenings, and industry trends. We're a small team of professionals approaching $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 local transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Den. And today we're going to be talking about all things terminations. They can be an ugly part of the business, but it's inevitable. It happens. But before we get to that, let me introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lyons Group. To my left, Paul, Hammy the Rockberry, Aspen, the Ninja Gruen, and the boss, Shannon Martin Martinez. My name is Ben, the Terminator Lyons. This year, I have been the Terminator. There's been a lot of terminations. And I thought that this would be a great topic because it happens sometimes. It's just part of real estate. You don't always get to the finish line. If you did, you'd be wearing a cape. And I certainly don't wear a cape. Although, I have like with a spandex, the underwear. Oh, stop, Paul. Come on now. Oh, geez. But it is a part of this business, and it doesn't have to be contentious, although it is sometimes. But I want to talk about terminations, how they play out, and what you should be thinking about if you are looking to terminate a real estate deal. Again, we're not attorneys, obviously, so we always recommend that you consult an attorney. But this is just more for talking points, things you should be considering or thinking about. So, Aspen. Terminator 2
this week. Yeah.
This week. We've seen a lot of them lately. Like, what's going on in the market? Share your thoughts on why maybe so many terminations this year.
I think nationally there's like 37% of all contracts are terminating, which is much higher.
What was that?
37% of contracts, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about that, it's almost 40% of contracts are terminating. I think it has to do a lot with, there was a huge flurry last year. You know, whenever interest rates were super low, people were more inclined to buy a house. Now buyers really have to do their due diligence, and they're having to make sure that the house that they're buying is worth it, especially whenever you're looking at much higher interest rates. It's going to cost you more to own that house, and you need to make sure you can do any repairs that are needed. You know, the budget's a little bit tighter than it was. So I think people are still having that, rush to get into a house because there isn't very much on the market. But then they're taking their time during the process and making sure what they're buying is what they want.
Yeah, and I've felt that too. Just seeing a lot of buyers, right? When a new listing hits, there's this kind of like, there's excitement. And do I go ahead and just submit on terms? Do I go above asking price? And they don't know like how much activity is, because I've had listings where we hit the market and we have 2 showings, and each of those buyers, they don't know, like, are they having 10 showings or, is this going to be a multiple offer situation? So they're putting a good foot forward right out of the gate. And, we don't really have much activity. They go under contract right away and they go, did I shoot too quick? And so then that plays into it. I'm paying a higher interest rate. Maybe there's some pullback. I'm going to really hammer the seller on the home inspection, and sellers are saying what, Shannon?
Sellers are still saying no. They still want last year's conditions. Because I think what was happening is, before, when the market was really hot, you would see the buyers come in and they say, I'm willing to pay top dollar. Interest rates were good. There wasn't a lot on the market. I'm willing to pay top dollar. I'm willing to take the house as it is. I'm willing to, pretty much negotiate anything I need to. Now, I think that things are a little bit cooler on that side. People are jumping in and now they're saying, well, for this price I'm paying, I'd like a few things done around the house. And, at the price that I'm paying, I'd like a little bit of contribution to my closing costs. And, people start slowing down and thinking a little bit more about it. Whereas when you have that competition, you have that stress on you of there's a looming 5 other offers waiting behind you and they're going to take it. And you say, okay, I'll just do what I need to do to get this house. I think now that pressure is off. So buyers can now step back and say, maybe I want a little bit more. And we're at that point. We're kind of at that crossroads where sellers are still holding on to that and buyers are starting to want a little bit more. And it's harder to get past that than it was before. And it'll get easier. Sellers will start loosening up and realizing they need to start doing a little bit more for buyers now.
I think I shared on my own personal house too. I think I overpaid for it at that time by about $60,000, but the interest rate was so good. I mean, the sellers wouldn't repair anything, and I was kind of grumpy about it, but it still was like checked all the boxes that we wanted it to check. And there wasn't very many houses on the market and we had to move. So,
and a couple years down the line, it doesn't matter anymore.
And it didn't matter. But if I was buying the same house, even at the same price, but with interest rates now, I would probably not be super pumped to pay that much over us.
Yeah. You might think twice about it.
I would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's that contraction and expansion that happens between the buyers and sellers. Sometimes they're meeting, their deals are getting done, and then there's the retraction part of things where buyers are hesitant, interest rates are higher, inventory is going up a little bit, not a tremendous amount, but a little bit, and then there's that disconnect. But if you're in a situation where you're under contract on a deal and you're thinking about terminating, Paul talked to us a little bit about, from a buyer standpoint, what would be some of the things that they should be thinking about when submitting a termination? If they just said, look, seller's not working with us on any of the repairs, I think I want to terminate this deal. What walk us through what a buyer should be thinking about?
That was a long question.
It is a long question for a short answer.
You're up for the job, Paul. You're up for it.
What was the question?
What was
No, sorry. No, I think
every time.
So I think with a buyer, I think there's a couple things. In our purchase agreement, there's a lot of baked into there. It says who gets earnest money out. So there's a lot of contingencies within the contract. So if you're a buyer and you're trying to get out of a deal, I would say figure out what contingency you can get out on. So if you're in your inspection period, you just say if you're looking to get out based on inspections, that's when you do it. If your financing falls through, there's a financing contingency. And what the purchase agreement really says is who gets earnest money back. So if there's any earnest money tied to a deal, whichever side is getting out, legally based on the terms of the agreement, they get the earnest money. Now what you have to do if you're a buyer is not try to breach contract and say, I'm just walking away with no contractual term that I can look to. Then you have some liability. Then the seller has some things that they can do to either make you perform or try to keep the earnest money.
I think buyers need to think about why they're terminating too. Is it because of the inspections and they don't have money to repair some of the items and the seller's not going to do any of it? That to me is a completely valid reason to walk away from a house.
Perfectly legitimate.
Yep. Yeah. If you can't, justify, if you're not going to be able to afford the upkeep and repairs, that is not something that you should be purchasing. If you just decide, oh, I don't think I want to live here anymore. I think you need to really consider, am I going to be able to find something that checks most of my boxes in this price range, and kind of look around and see what else is out there. And how long you're willing to wait for, kind of weigh the pros and cons. I know my first few houses didn't check every box that I wanted. Even this house has a few boxes that aren't checked, but I think the more houses you purchase and, you upgrade a little bit more, and then, okay, I really can't live without this. It's okay especially when you're buying a starter home, for it to be a starter home. It might not check every single box, but if it checks most of them, that's a little bit more realistic. If you're just backing out because you're getting cold feet, that's also fine, but you probably need to reevaluate, am I going to be able to get this deal and feel comfortable with this again, or not,
If there was a cold feet clause, that would be the most used clause ever. So either cold feet or, what is it called? Price. Sticker shock.
Yeah. Sticker shock. Yeah.
Yeah. So you say, what's my monthly payment? I can't do that. I had something come back.
I think that's why lenders do have to give it within 3 days though, because if you see that number and you're like, oh, I actually can't afford this comfortably, that is a valid reason to back out of a contract. And now going forward, okay, I need to be looking closer in this price range. So maybe I was pre-approved for this, but I do not feel comfortable paying that. Okay, then we're going to look for something a little bit lower.
Yeah, one of the things that, experience has taught me, and I've had less terminations than I have in my first few years in the business, was I'll go with a buyer and they'll be like, I really like the house, but I need this changed. And I always say, If they don't, are you still willing to buy this house? Are you willing to buy it as is? And if they kind of waffle on that, I go, then maybe this isn't the house. Because if they don't fix that and you're not willing to go for that, we're going to terminate. That's going to cost you money, cost the seller money. So maybe let's think about that. And I've been able to either convince them that it's worth it or say, let's keep looking. And
or get it in the contract right away and make that a condition. Like, we can't purchase unless whatever that thing is done. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. When you can take care of those issues up front before it starts, instead of having it come up later, you're less likely to have it terminate later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can build anything into the contract. Mm-hmm. So if that is a concern, then build it in and address it right up front. But Aspen, I think you make a good point in the sense that if you have to be honest with yourself. You got to be honest with the situation. Like, yeah, I just don't have the money for the repairs. And if you're honest with your realtor about that and you're honest with the seller about that, then there may be some solutions there. Well, let's see if we can increase the price and take care of some of these, conditions at closing. Have a check cut to a contractor of your choice. There's ways.
Yeah, different loan program that, gives you some money for renovations.
Yeah, pivot to a 203K or something similar where you can roll in some of these improvement costs, and that way you're not having to come out of pocket, but you can afford the monthly payment. Mm-hmm. So I do think that's a critical part is, because we get into these deals and you go from big picture down to in the weeds, and you got to be able to like forcefully move yourself back out to the big picture. And that's what you were speaking to a second ago is, can I find something else that's going to check some of my boxes? Even a starter home, I need to really consider this is not going to be my forever home. So I need to be somewhat flexible with the condition or whatever else. And if there's a dozen other homes that check those boxes, then great, let's terminate and move on. But if this is one of very few, then I need to reconsider. And that's oftentimes our jobs as realtors to help people step back from being in the weeds and then help them get into the weeds a little bit, because I think it's healthy to be in both perspectives. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. I've had this one buyer. He was very nervous to purchase. So he'd been looking for about a year. He terminated on a few recently. And I finally had to have kind of an honest conversation with him. And I had to say, do you remember when we were looking a year ago? It's just going to continue to keep going. So if you would like to have home ownership, then it's kind of getting time to make a decision. Not any pushy way, but also just having an honest conversation of, is this actually what you want? Or is it something that you're not quite ready to do yet? Mm-hmm. And turns out he was ready to do it. And he was just needed a lot of reassurance, and he needed to find the perfect house. So it took a little bit longer, but I think we had to get a little bit, I think it was almost good that he went in and terminated a few times just because he was able to see other inspections, other things that came up. So now whenever we found this new house for him, it was like, oh yeah, this feels good. This is perfect. This all feels right now, versus some people might not need all of that reassurance. It just depends on the person.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people correlate termination directly with the earnest money, but is that truly the case, Shannon? That the termination dictates the earnest money? Or is there some separation there?
Yeah, I think there's separation there. I mean, I think that earnest money, depending on, like, going back to what Paul said, there's a lot of contingencies in that offer. And as long as you're within your time frame, buyers are entitled to earnest money back if certain benchmarks aren't made, whether it's satisfaction with inspections or selling their house that they need to in a timely manner, or, lending issues, or even procuring insurance on the house,
or Aunt Edna coming to see the house.
Yeah.
Within 10 days.
And you can write and you could write, there's plenty in there, but you can even write more in there, which we do plenty of times, contingent upon them seeing it in person, or contingent upon the wife seeing it and improving it, or contingent upon them buying another house, or whatever it is. There's contingencies on both sides. And as long as those are being met, and if they're not met at some point and we're in those timelines, then earnest money can go back to them. I think it only gets sticky when you really have someone that's not following those rules that says, you know what? Well, we just found out that my wife, needs this surgery. And so we've decided maybe this isn't the best time for a move. Totally legitimate. But your seller shouldn't be out any money because your circumstances changed. You still don't have any legal right, even if it's completely understandable and we all feel sorry for you. You consider maybe the seller has already, hired a moving van, and they have maybe moved. Maybe they have done some repairs and upgrades that you wanted individually. Should you have that earnest money back because you had a legitimate reason? Probably not. You've kind of put somebody else in a hard situation. So it's really case by case, but there's a lot of ways for a buyer to get the earnest money back. And there's plenty of ways for the seller to keep your earnest money as well.
That's true. And you can sign a termination and not.
You can do one and not the other.
Not
you can agree on one thing.
Sign on distributing the earnest money. There may not be an agreement there.
That was interesting when they split those documents.
Yeah, because they used to be tied together.
They should be separate. They should be, because buyer and seller can say, look, we know we're not moving forward, but I think I should get it and you think you should get it. So we can table that and do that later, but we know right now we're not moving forward. You should be able to terminate without deciding how that's going to happen at that moment.
I think they should be separate.
Doesn't always, it doesn't always go hand.
Yeah, that was a horrible form because it used to say both sides have to decide whether I could come after you,
Litigation?
Through litigation or legally or whatever we want to say there, or no, we're just keeping it to the earnest money. So it was who gets the earnest money. There was a lot of different things on one form.
Then you always have
if you didn't agree.
Yeah. Then you always have those people that say, well, I'm just going to, if they're not going to give me back my earnest money, I'm not going to let them go back to market. I'm not going to sign it.
It puts the seller in a very hard spot.
So then the seller's got to decide if I want to sell this to somebody else. I'm sitting here tied up with these guys until I release it to them because they're not going to release it to me.
Even if the buyer was totally at fault.
That was totally unfair back then. Yeah. Those forms were not written well. Yeah.
The only time I've had buyers lose earnest money is because they just decide that they're not going to buy it a day before closing or day of closing.
Yes.
So that's pretty much the only time.
Yeah.
I've seen this.
Buyers do have a lot. There's a lot of benchmarks to make. There's a lot of things they have to be satisfied with. Everything, you can get your improvement location report 2 or 3 days before closing and look at it and find out there's an easement right over your roof, your garage or something.
Yeah, we just
and you just say, I am not going to buy this home until this is resolved. Well, I can't resolve it. Okay, then I'm going to terminate. There's a lot of ways to terminate right up until then get your earnest money back. But just changing your mind, just having cold feet, just deciding that your circumstances have changed, that is no reason for a seller to kind of take it in the shorts or be out damaged in any way at all. That's what earnest money's for, is good faith.
Yeah. Now you had a pretty sizable termination that happened and that was pretty shocking to me that someone walked away from sizable amount of money.
Yep. Yeah. It was a huge commercial sale and the day of closing, he did not show up and he said, I'm no longer focusing on this, and walked away from tens of thousands of dollars to never look back again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy to me, but also my seller was like, okay.
At least the seller wasn't damaged. Now, the seller may have been if he didn't have that earnest money on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are you all advocates for more earnest money to keep people in the deal and maybe have a messy situation if it goes south, or less earnest money where, there's not as much skin in the game, but there's not as much of a mess down the road?
I always advocate for more, but I think it's a case by case basis. If somebody has, they're buying it, but they need all this assistance and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's not worth it.
Yeah, they may not have a lot of capital.
I try to go for 1%. That's kind of an easy number to say if you're gonna, for skin in the game, put down 1%.
I think it should be 3 to 5% personally, because you're gonna have, most people are going to have a down payment too, and it goes towards your down payment. It's not. You just I think whenever we're looking at $500 earnest money, you get a lot of people who aren't very serious and they don't take it very seriously.
Well, the $500 to $1,000 has been the standard here for forever. I think even getting it to 1%, we've had a lot of pushback. I would agree 3 to 5% would probably be good, but
you think about it in those times where there's just a big flurry of offers coming in on a property, and someone's going to make a great one, and they're going to not put a lot of earnest money down, but maybe the offer was very enticing to the seller, but they're making that offer thinking, this is just going to buy me some time to think about it. And if I lose my $500, well, I lose $500. It's the only way I'm getting in. But the seller doesn't necessarily know that, and then they're stuck going, well, gosh, I just I had all these offers sitting there on the table. I kind of missed that first excitement that I had out there because this guy was just throwing it out on the table to see if it was something he wanted to do. And we've seen those people before that say, well, can I just make an offer on a couple of them and see which one goes through? That may not be the most ethical thing to do. And sellers don't always know what those buyers are thinking. The more money you have, the more interested, like they're in it. They're it still may fall apart. They may get their earnest money back, but they're in it. That they're committed to this process. They're planning on trying to buy this house.
During COVID, whenever we were just seeing that constant, you had to push, we were doing a lot of TOM fees or time off market fees. And I won a lot of offers that way just because it was good faith. They're purchasing this house.
That's right.
And
they're just
they
giving
want
you
it.
money.
Yep. And they are willing to give you money to take it off the market that will not go towards the final payment. So in that case, I think it makes sense to maybe have a little bit lower earnest money because you're actually paying them
Exactly.
$2,000, $5,000, whatever, over whatever you offered.
Yeah. Whether you take it or not.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to explain to our viewers what a TOM fee is, which is what Aspen said, a time off the market fee. And it's paid right up front. It doesn't go to escrow, doesn't go to the broker, goes directly to the seller to say, thank you for accepting my offer. I'm going to write you a check, $1,000, $2,000, $500, whatever it is, to entertain my offer, to take my offer and give me time to do my initial inspections. But that's not money that's credited back at closing. It's not money that I'm expecting back. It's just good faith money. And that works well. I mean, but the market shifted a bit. Would you argue that a TOM fee is as effective now? Would it make sense to do a TOM fee now?
I don't think I'd do a TOM fee now because I don't think in that case it would be looking after the best interest of the buyers. Whenever we were having to compete for every single offer, the TOM fee made sense for the buyer and for the seller, but it made sense for the buyer to say, this is going to make your offer look better. It's going to push it maybe towards the front. Now, that might be true, but I don't think you need it. If you're the only offer on the table, you don't need it. You don't need it. Yeah.
Right. You know, this is such a good opportunity to toot our own horns. This is why it's so important to have a realtor. People don't realize how much thought we put into every single decision we make with our buyers and sellers, whether it's the market analysis, whether it's terminating, whether it's writing an offer. It's sometimes to them, it feels very standard, but on the backside, what we do, there's so much knowledge and experience that goes into it. And when do you do this? And when do you just because your Uncle Fred 3 years ago, when he bought a house, maybe paid a TOM fee, or just because even last year, your mother-in-law bought a house down the street and did that, doesn't necessarily make it good for you today. That's the value really of a realtor, to be able to say, today in this market, with this house, with the competition we're looking at, with all these factors in place, like we know those factors, this is the best advice I can give you. Now, what they do with it is going to be up to them. But when people go into it alone, and I have got no problem. I respect it for sell by owner. But when you go into buying something on your own or selling something on your own, you lose all that value that we have of all that specific information on the best way to negotiate at that moment, because it's different all the time.
It's true. And I talk about my own personal house pretty often, but I bought it from a for sale by owner, but she had done like a single price listed on the market. So she didn't have anyone helping her on the other side. And she got all the way to closing, and she was very hard to work with the whole time, but she was so mad at closing because she didn't fully understand everything that she was going to have to pay at the end on her side. And she didn't have someone explaining that to her. And maybe she would have done things differently if she did.
Exactly.
So I think I have no problem with for sale by owners either, but I think realtors really, you shouldn't have to worry about the losing your earnest money if you need to terminate, because we're going to make sure.
We're going to find how do we make this work?
Yeah. And I think that's such an important, I wish I could have, well, we did record that. That was a commercial right there. Did we record it? We did record it.
The National Association of Realtors needs to take our advice and market us that way.
Shannon, the way you said that was so perfect, because people don't put a lot of stock. They say, Paul, you're just filling out numbers on a pre-printed form. Like, where are you bringing value? Well, it's all the thought behind those numbers, right? Yeah. It's all the strategy. It's all the
there really
current
is a million
market
decisions we're making that we're thinking of in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when it comes out, it may seem simple, but boy, there's so much thought.
You see it a lot with new realtors coming on, I think because they had a really good experience or a bad experience, but mainly because they had a really good experience. Like, I could do this. And then they come and they're like, oh my gosh, none of my offers are getting accepted. I have because it's the little stuff that makes a difference. Yeah.
Well, speaking of, if I may, did you have somewhere to go with that?
No.
Okay. If I may, speaking of new realtors, I've been thinking here, when I was a new realtor, I thought termination meant failure. And what termination actually means is the end of this particular contract between these two parties. So it's not necessarily mean that we failed. So when we track terminations, we track, not getting paid, or, how many times did we mess up? And we look back to see what we could have done different. And when you look at it and it's just, well, this is just the way that contract played out, it it takes away some of the pain. Your wallet necessarily feels differently, but for us, but once you find out that, or figure out and accept the fact that this is just how that contract plays out, terminations become just another day in the life of a realtor.
I really don't have any problem with termination on the buy or sell side, because I think if a buyer's terminating on the sale side, we can find another buyer that wants that house. If they're terminating on the buy side, we can find them another house. You can find another house.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there.
It just means that wasn't the right fit from start to finish. I mean, sometimes it starts out good, but that's what all the contingencies are for. Dig in and see and try to eliminate these and make it work.
You should be happy with a purchase this size. And even like I said, even though if it doesn't check every box, maybe it checks the boxes that you can move on to upgrade a house because it's going to gain value quicker.
Yep.
That might be what you're looking for.
There's always a silver lining there somewhere. But to parlay off that real quick, sellers, do sellers get to terminate? And if so, you know what I mean?
Not a lot.
In fact, we just had a situation where, I'm working with a buyer and they get an offer in I'm working with a seller, but they're trying to buy a property. So they got an offer in and they're like, but we got to find a house. Well, let's go ahead and accept this contract, but build in a contingency that you have a set period of time, 2 weeks or whatever it is, to get something under contract and then perform your due diligence. Because what if you go under contract and then you don't perform your due diligence in time, or you do a home inspection or something comes back and that deal terminates? Like then all of a sudden, seller selling this house and now homeless. Those are the things that we think about that keep us up at night as realtors. Like, did we protect our clients?
Well, and two, would you have a buyer that has lending issues, or you get a pre-qualification that's not a pre-approval? They haven't come back under underwriting. The lender is not giving you the information that you need. Come up with, right up to closing, and you find out we need to extend because lending is taking longer. I think there's a lot of things that sellers should have the ability to say, you need to perform here. If you're not performing, or if you're not qualified, we need to know right away so we can get back on the market and find another buyer. So those are instances where the sellers have rights too.
That's the time
Fair
whenever
point.
they say, I'm not extending.
Yeah.
And then the contract is void.
Yeah.
So,
And void versus
voidable
versus terminating are two different things. So a seller is mostly in a position where they allow things to play out, and then they have kind of, after they've played out, they have final say. I want to extend, or we're done playing the game. But to be cognizant of it, sellers can't just go in and say, I want to terminate, right? Without potential legal repercussions. So we're winding down on time. I'm going to skip the speed round today because I think we had a great discussion on termination, but I do want to go into my favorite part of the podcast. It's called the Lyons Pride, where we highlight an individual, an event, an organization that does wonderful things in our community, makes our community better. As Lyons Group members, we go out and we've, for years and decades, tried to do what we can to help this community become the best it can be. And we like to highlight those that do the same. Shannon, you have the Lyons Pride today.
So with the holidays coming up, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and this is a time of the year where there's a lot more need in our area. And in the state of New Mexico, I believe, don't quote me on this, 1 in 8 people in New Mexico struggle with food insecurity. So at this time of the year, I really want to highlight the Echo Food Bank. They do a tremendous amount of work. There is volunteers and paid employees there. They are out there regularly, especially during the holidays, trying to, raise money, gather food, provide holiday meals. But it's not just about the holiday meals. It's the everyday meals. And we a lot of times get lost and don't realize how many of our family and neighbors struggle with food insecurity. There is a lot of people in our community. These are our family and neighbors that need these resources. And so I guess I want to say thank you to them for the hard work that they do, because they work hard all year round. But at the holidays, it feels like they're in overtime. They do so much more. And with this time of the year coming up, I also want to just encourage people that we don't all have a lot to give, and that's okay. But everybody has some extra pantry items you can give up. Everybody has that extra, $20 you can do when you go to Walmart and you're picking up your groceries. Just buy a few non-perishables, or, Safeway. I'm sure a lot of them do it. I don't want to call anyone particular. They make it very easy. I think Safeway, Albertsons are owned by the same people. They make it really easy. You can go just add an extra $15 to your bill usually and get the bag, which is a holiday meal for people. That goes to the food banks. Those are all really great programs, and it doesn't take everybody doing everything. It just takes everybody doing a little bit of something. And so I want to thank them, especially this time of year. They're getting ready to do a lot of hard work, more hard work than they do all year long. And maybe we can say thank you to them, or maybe we can do a little bit of extra and make their job easier. I just really want to call them out. They do good work all the time, and they're really not appreciated by the majority of our community, but they should be.
You're like a stinking walking commercial today. It's just wild. She's on it. I love it.
Well, I should have brought more stats or personal names of people that are down there.
Just for our viewers, for the Echo Food Bank, you can go down there if you do have food insecurities, and I like that term. Then walk us through what they can do. They can walk down and
you can go down to Echo and just ask for help. You can ask for help. And if you can give the help, you can just go down and ask how you can help. I mean, they're always open for help. I know there's been several times I've hopped in their drive-through and gone through and everybody's getting their bags, and I've handed a bag to them and I've said, I just waited in line because I had some extra stuff. I had some baby formula that I had left over that was still, and baby formula after COVID was hard to get. And I wanted to make sure they had that for people. And they are so gracious and so thankful for every ounce that they get. And they are so friendly for anybody that walks in there and needs anything. So you can walk in there at any time and ask how you can help, or tell them what you need. And they are willing to accommodate you either way.
Well, Shannon,
they do good work.
Thank you for that. That is absolutely fantastic. Echo Food Banks have been a mainstay in this community for many, many years. They've had some tough times, but they've survived and they are thriving, but they need our help. If you have extra non-perishable food, or you want to make a monetary donation, go down to Echo Food Bank and make a difference. Again, I think you said that perfectly. Like, it shouldn't be a few people trying to make the difference. It should be a lot of people doing the little things that really make the difference. And if you're a part of the Echo Food Bank and that organization, thank you for all the work that you do for many, many years, helping our community and the people that do have the food insecurities, because we forget about that. We are so blessed in so many ways that we sometimes forget those that struggle for the basics in life. And we want to lift those people up and allow them to have the same opportunity, the same playing field that we have, and that we get to enjoy every day. So thank you for that, Shannon. If you like our content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can go to our Facebook page, like and subscribe there. We're pushing out great content. You can get on our newsletter, fantastic newsletter we send out every week with all kinds of market trends and information, new listings, things like that are coming up. Schedule an appointment with any one of us. Go to sjcbroker.com and schedule an appointment with any one of us here at the Lyons Group, whether you're looking to buy or sell residential or commercial. We are here to sit down with you and give you a competitive advantage in today's market. So thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed on real estate happenings. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group, visit sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.